This meeting of the Community Development Board is called to order at 1 p.m. on January 19th. Welcome everyone today. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This board consists of 7 members and 1 alternate who are appointed by the City Council and serve voluntarily. I am Michael Boutsikis, and I will ask the other members and the staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Mary Lau.
Mike Flannery.
Brian Barker. Niels Costa.
Lauren Maskey, Planning and Development.
Michael Farino, Assistant City Attorney.
Niels Costa.
John Quattrocki.
Chris Anaskevich.
Please remember to turn off your cell phones so they do not become a distraction during the meeting. Please also refrain from having conversations in this room so that we might hear all the testimony given today. To ensure a complete record of this board's actions, we ask that each individual wishing to speak, including the applicant, speak into the microphone at the podium in front of us. Clearly state your name and spell your last name for the clerk. Now I will ask all those in attendance today who plan to speak to please rise and be sworn by the clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the entire truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Agendas of today's meeting are on the podium to your left near the entry door. Also on this podium are a roster of the Community Development Board, the list of city staff, experts and their resumes, the board's rules of procedure, and the annual schedule of this board. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from last month's meeting. Those were included in our packets. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made, second. Motion made and second. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. This board has adopted, before I go there, where are my citizens to be heard? I might be missing a page. Okay, so anyways, at this point in the meeting, it's for if you're here today and have anything to be said that's related to an item not on the agenda, it's our portion where citizens can be heard. Is there anybody here today to speak on an item not on today's agenda?
I can't hear anything you're saying.
Is my microphone not on? Can you?
I'm sorry?
She says she can't hear me. Is my mic not on? Or?
Everything's mumbled. Everything everybody's talking about is mumbled.
I think the volume is okay. I think the volume is okay. Microphones are on.
Okay.
It's a mask thing.
Okay.
Maybe a little louder.
All right. I'll take the mask off and we'll go from there on mine. Okay. Is there anybody here today to speak on an item on the agenda that's not on today's agenda? There being none, this board has adopted a consent agenda format, and the consent items are identified as such on the agenda. Consent agenda items are those items for which the Planning and Development Department recommends approval. The applicant is in agreement with any proposed conditions, and no written objections to the case have been received to date. Items may be removed from the consent agenda today by a member of the board, a member of the staff, or any person in the audience for questions or objections. I will read each item in the consent agenda, and if any person wishes to remove this item from the consent agenda, please so state or raise your hand, and we will remove it from the consent agenda. Items removed from the consent agenda will be heard in the regular order of the meeting. Items that remain on the consent agenda will be approved with a single vote. The items on today's consent agenda is case FLD 2020. Actually, it's been removed from the consent agenda. Case number 1 on our agendas for today has been removed because there was an email received. So there's only one other item that would be on our consent agenda. That would be FLD 2020-10024 at 724 Bayway Boulevard. The owner is Mark Bediant. The applicant is Terry Scapik with Woods Consulting. The property is on the north side of Bayway Boulevard, approximately 20 feet west of Gulf Boulevard, and we're reviewing a boat lift in association with an existing multi-use dock, greater than 500 square feet. Does anybody wish to have this item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, those are the items on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case FLD 2020-10024 on today's consent agenda based on evidence in the record, including the application of the staff report, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We will now move on to our regular agenda. There are two types of cases that could be heard. Today we only have a quasi-judicial case. The procedures for our quasi-judicial hearings or level 2 cases, such as flexible development, are considered as quasi-judicial hearings. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the Community Development Board reviews the application, the staff report, correspondence, and all evidence presented today, and makes a final decision subject to appeal. This board has previously qualified all the city staff who will testify as experts in their areas of professional training, education, and experience. The list of city staff experts and their resumes are on the handbook on the podium near the entry door. Any other professionals who desire to be qualified as an expert witness shall so request at the beginning of the case and present a resume to each board member. The board shall determine whether or not to qualify the person as an expert and in what field of study. At the beginning of each level 2 case, I will ask for anyone who wishes to request party status to come forward and state your reasons. Party status may be granted if the person requesting such status demonstrates that he is or she is a substantially affected person. The board will then determine whether or not to grant party status, and the case will then proceed as follows. First, requests for party status. Second, presentation by planning and development staff, 10 minutes maximum. Presentation by the applicant, 10 minutes maximum. Presentation by persons with party status, if any, 5 minutes per party. Cross-examination of witnesses by planning and development staff. Cross-examination of witnesses by applicant. Cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status. Comments by the public, 3 minutes per person. Closing remarks by the planning and development staff, 3 minutes maximum. Closing remarks by persons granted party status, 3 minutes maximum. And closing remarks by the applicant, 3 minutes maximum. Closing of the public hearing and then discussion and vote by the board. Our level 2 case for today is as follows. It's case FLD 2020-10020 and PLT 2020-11006 at 1551, 55, and 59 Union Street. The owners are Paul M. Danley and Paul M. Danley III and 1555 Union Street, LLC. The applicant is John Doucette from Spring Engineering. The property is on the south side of Union Street, approximately 117 feet west of Powderhorn Drive and Union Street intersection, and we're reviewing a proposal for a 96-bed assisted living facility with 16 attached dwelling units. Does anybody request party status in this matter? Are you seeking party status, ma'am?
We wanted to speak, we're neighbors.
You want to speak? If you want to speak, then you can speak during public comment unless you want to request party status.
What is party status?
Well, party status affords you the opportunity to have an appeal right if the decision is not what you look for, as well as to present evidence in the case. Jay, am I missing anything else in terms of a brief summary of party status?
Other than they would have to show the board they're substantially affected.
Oh, yeah, you'd have to show that you qualify for party status, and you'd have to come forward to the microphone and address that. If you'd like party status, come forward to the microphone, give us your name and address and why you're looking for party status, and we would... One at a time, yes, please. Please state your full name and spell your last name for the clerk when you approach it to the podium. Yes, right up there.
Diane Maronio, 20MORONIO,
Okay.
2042 Powderhorn Drive, Clearwater.
And you're requesting party, did you receive notice of today's hearing?
Yeah,
You did, and you're adjacent to the property itself?
I'm right next to it.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept party status?
So moved.
Do I have a
I
motion?
moved. Thank you.
Second came from over here. I'm not sure if it was Brian or Mike, sorry.
I'll take it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, so you'll be granted party status. We'll call you up in the order that for the opportunity to speak, okay? Is there anybody else seeking party status today? Please state your full name and spell your last name for the clerk.
Janice Perzwara, now comes the hard part. P-R-Z-Y-W-A-R-A.
Well, my last name is Bootsika, so we both have all the consonants covered, I think.
1549 Cumberland Lane, Clearwater, Florida, 33755.
And did you receive notice of today's hearing?
I'm sorry?
Did you receive a notice in the mail of today's hearing?
Yes.
You did? Okay.
I have hearing aids in this big room. I might have to ask you to repeat.
That's quite all right. So we want to make sure you do hear us, so if, we won't be offended if you ask. Does anybody have a motion to accept party status?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll call you when the time is appropriate.
I did.
Okay. Then the board has granted party status to Ms. Moronio and Mrs. Perzwara. The granting of party status entitles you to these additional rights. You can personally testify. You can present evidence by documentary submittal. You can present witnesses and do cross-examination. You can present arguments, and you can appeal the decision of the board to a hearing officer or to the circuit court. Staff presentation.
Mr. Chair, before the presentation begins, the city would request that the board accept Ms. Crandall as an expert on the matter she's about to testify to.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Proceed.
Good afternoon. I'm going to see if this PowerPoint's going to come up for you.
We see it here.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody in the room sees it, though. Looks like, there it is now. It's on the other screens.
So I'm Ellen Crandall, presenting on behalf of the case planner, Kevin Nurnberger. The subject property is 3 parcels, 1551, 1555, 1559 Union Street. This is a survey of the overall site. They are zoned medium-density residential with an underlying future land use designation of residential low-medium. The property is not adjacent to any land designated as low-density residential. This is worth noting as some of the specific use criteria talk about LDR zoning. So there's each parcel separately. The request is to plat the 3 parcels into 2 parcels and construct an assisted living facility on 1 parcel and an independent living facility, which our code classifies as attached dwellings on the 2nd parcel. The project is being reviewed as a level 2 flexible development application to request the use of assisted living facility. So the attached dwellings will be located on the northern end of the site, closer to Union Street, and the assisted living facility will be further to the south on the site. The proposed project meets all required setbacks for assisted living facility and attached dwellings, as well as the minimum area lot width and size. The project is within the permitted density and the permitted impervious surface ratio, and is within the allowable height. Assisted living facilities and attached dwellings as a level 2 can request a height up to 50 feet. The proposal is for a height of 32 feet to the midpoint of the highest pitched roof for the assisted living facility and 17 feet to midpoint of pitched roof for the attached dwellings. So this is the attached dwellings here, and this is the assisted living facility. It should be noted that assisted living facilities are required to have a pitched roof. The proposal meets the setbacks and landscaping requirements. There are a few conditions of approval that address some details, such as that the landscaping plan show the use of shrubs around the perimeter of the site, as well as that they swap out some of the sod that's shown in the front to be landscape material for the required foundation landscaping material. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anybody from the board have any questions of planning staff? Seeing none. Okay. Next is presentation by the applicant. Is anybody here from the applicant to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Jay Doucette with Spring Engineering, or John Doucette as the record shows. I don't necessarily have a presentation to go beyond what Kevin had provided, but I'm here to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of the applicant from the board? No? Okay. Thank you. We'll call you if we have any questions.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to go to Ms. Maronio, who requested party status. If you want to come forward and you can present what you believe your case to be, so we can hear that, and also you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of the others after we go, the presentation's done.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions as to how they're going to deal with privacy issues. I mean, there's going to be a 30-foot building behind my house, and you're only going to have a 6-foot fence? Does that not make sense to anybody? Also, there's a drainage problem. I mean, there's always been a stream back there that goes into a little pond, and then it floods into the street through the yards on Cumberland Road. She can tell you that because she lives there. They're going to pave all that? Where's the water going to go? You know, they're putting a pond in the back? Well, that's wonderful. Is there going to be bugs? Is there going to be snakes? Is there going to be any kind of maintenance on it? Or are we just going to have a stagnant water now behind our houses? How is this improving my property value? I don't see how it's going to improve anything other than their property value and devalue mine. Who's going to want to live behind or have that right in their backyard? I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Maroney from the board? All right, thank you. We'll call you for any other questions. Ms. Praswara? Hopefully I'm coming close to saying that correctly.
I have paperwork from 2005 and 2006 when that property was first annexed into the city, because I had concerns, environmental concerns, and I sent the city pictures of gopher tortoises, and there's owls that live back there, and all this, all this wildlife. Well, no one ever came forward to develop the property in 15 years, so I just brought that along in case anybody was interested in it. But me and another person here live on the in the cul-de-sac.
If staff can assist you and put that on that table to your left there, and the camera above it will actually be able to project it for us to see.
Okay, so we can hand them out, but for it to be on the camera, you can also put it here, this.
Okay.
Facing the way Clearwater reads.
There you go, and then you'll be able to see it.
Oh,
They
okay,
switched
cool.
it as well, so.
Once they flip that switch.
Color and everything, yes.
There you go.
ma'am. So let's.
Well, that didn't work. It's supposed to work. There we go. Now we've got it there. Yeah, you might be able to zoom in just a little, but I think that helps a lot.
There you go. And then, if you want to, it is working wrong there.
My concern is the drainage problem. It's, as I told the planner this morning several times, it's a swamp back there. And he said, you keep telling me there's a swamp back there, but like the city would have taken care of blah, 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 blah. I don't know the name of the guy I talked to, but he was very nice and patient. But my street takes the whole south, abuts the whole south part of that property. I live on the other side of the street. From I put me there, if you can see me.
Yep, you're in
That's where I am.
the southwest corner of the cul-de-sac, it looks like.
Yes, our cul-de-sac used to flood because all the water came out from the swamp, we used to call it, because of the drainage back there. 10 or 15 years ago, the city put in a new storm drain. The storm drain runs between my house and the house next door to me. And they put in a new storm drain and no more flooding. I don't know, miracle, it was great because I had the water come up to my doorstep on the cul-de-sac. To this day, there is still flooding between the third and the fourth house across the street from me. Every time it rains hard, it's a river coming between the two houses. It floods the guy's front yard. It takes 2 days for it to drain out into the street and then into the stormwater sewer and then into the stormwater drain. It takes 2 days for it to drain out of there. And that, every time it rains hard, that's what happens. So my concern would be that, the drainage issue is going to be taken care of, because to me it sounds like it could get worse. And FEMA rezoned our properties in that subdivision, and now I'm in the flood zone, so I'm carrying flood insurance now, but I'd like to know a little bit more about how the drainage issues can be taken care of.
Okay. So your primary concern is the flooding that comes through from between those two parcels on the north side of Cumberland and then goes down to the storm drain. And you said it takes about 2 days for the water to actually filter out and get into that storm drain?
They didn't come. They're the ones with the problem, not me, because now it doesn't flood my property since the city put in the better, new and improved storm drain.
Okay.
But it floods between the two houses. I think they're both rentals. Besides me, there's 4 other people on the street. I've lived there 32 years, April 1st. The other 4 people have been, they're there almost 50 years since the subdivision was built. But the rest of the neighborhood is mostly rentals, and I don't even really know those people very well. But, I mean, I would, if I had that river coming through every time it rains, I would, be asking the city about, like, what, we need to do something.
All right. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Brzara? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions before we go on to the cross-examination side of things of the applicant in relation to the comments they brought up, or for the city? Okay. Have a seat, ma'am. Next item is cross-examination of witnesses by planning and development staff. Is there any? No? Is there any cross-examination of witnesses by the applicant? No? Okay. And any cross-examination of witnesses by the persons with party status? And Ms. Moronio and Ms. Brzara, if you want to ask questions of the developer at this point, or the city, you can specifically, but I think that you kind of state out what your concerns are, if I understood them correctly. Okay, you're good? Okay. Thank you. All right, is there anybody here from the public who wishes to comment on this matter? Anybody else here who wants to speak on this matter? Seeing none, then closing remarks by the planning department and development staff. None?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for planning staff.
Okay, sure. If you can come forward, Ms. Crandall.
I have one question regarding the tree mitigation. There's a lot of nice trees on this site, some very large oaks and live oaks. And I noticed it looks like on the last page of the tree inventory that we're removing 101 trees and 101 are being planted. And there's 1,687 inches being removed and 191 inches being planted. And so it shows a deficit of 1,496. Is that deficit being mitigated for?
When a tree rates better than 3 on our City of Clearwater scale, 0 to 6, 0 being dead, and 6 being a specimen, anything rated 3 or better is worthy of preservation, and if it can't be preserved, then they either replace it on an inch for inch based on the diameter of the tree, or they pay into the city's tree fund $48 per inch. So those inches that are not planted back on the site would be paid for into the city's tree fund.
Okay, do we know what that is? Is the 1,496, is that the total inches, and some of that does not need to be mitigated for because of a lower rating? Or is that the total amount being mitigated for?
The table should provide the total number of inches rated 3 or better that are being removed.
Okay.
Generally, if they're rated less than a 3, or if they're an invasive species or so on, we wouldn't include it in the table.
Okay.
That is the applicant's table. Generally, that's something we would finalize at time of building permit, as which trees can be preserved or changes, or if there's damage, changes until the landscape final.
Okay.
That is a typical address as a condition of prior to C of O on a building permit, that the landscape deficit either be paid or, finalized prior to passing the landscape final. Just so we get the exact correct number prior to completing the project.
Okay. So if I were to assume that the applicant were to plant 101 trees on this property, then they would pay into the tree fund for the deficit of 1,496 inches. Is that correct?
Sounds correct.
Okay. What is the going rate per inch for the tree fund?
It is $48 per inch.
$48 per inch. Okay. Okay. Very, very well. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Crandall. And you said you had no closing remarks?
Correct.
Okay.
No closing remarks.
Any closing remarks by the applicant, Mr. Doucette?
I would just like to talk about the stormwater. We are very aware of the problems that are out there. There's a pretty good slope, and all of that water runs to the south through their properties, much like they're saying. And if you look at our site plan, we're providing a stormwater pond at the southern end of the property. All of our runoff has to go through the pond, so we control the runoff at that point. And we are designing the storm to attenuate the 100-year storm event. So we are going to improve their stormwater problem that they have out there today. So I just want to make sure that they're aware of, we are actually going to be helping the problem.
Mr. Chair, if I may, a couple questions.
Yeah.
So the pond you have on the rear of the site, there's not going to be any outfall to it? You mentioned 100-year storm.
Well, yes, right now, the plan was to not have outfall. We are looking at some opportunities to pipe the outfall underground. We may need some assistance to get some easements to make that happen, but that's the intent. Is it would have an outfall, but it would not run off through their property.
If there's any opportunity for an easement to make the situation better.
Yep, that's the route we're going to try to take.
And the residents mentioned swamp. Are there wetlands back there or no?
No, there's no wetlands back there. It may hold water for a couple days, but it's not wetland designated as wetland.
Thank you.
Okay.
What about the flood zone? Has that changed with the new FEMA maps?
There are some studies by Pinellas County that imply that it is in the floodplain, but this actual property is in the FEMA flood zone X, so we are not in a flood zone.
But Pinellas County shows you're in the Pinellas County?
They show a flood zone elevation that does.
But nobody's
enter our
holding
property.
you to that flood zone?
I'm sorry?
But nobody's holding you to that flood zone
Correct.
because you're not in the county?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I kind of went over. I'll go ahead and ask. Ms. Moronio, did you have any closing comments?
I guess not.
Okay. Ms. Pezzaro, did you have any closing comments? Okay. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter. And time for discussion and vote by the board. Any discussion, or does anybody have a motion?
I would just like to comment on the tree mitigation and the city's policy. I think on this property, we are losing a lot of canopy, nice canopy within the city. And the current policy is to mitigate at a price of $48 per inch. I believe that's what the number was. And so for, say, a 2-inch tree, which would be twice that, it would cost almost 5 times that to replant that on a property. And so I think because of the way our code is written, we encourage developers to pay into the tree fund when actually it would benefit to actually plant back on the property. So although it's not necessarily related to my decision on this project, I think it's important to understand that.
Point well taken. We've got to kind of follow the code, but this is something that you see that should be addressed at some point.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Anybody else have any discussion on this matter?
If I could just make one comment regarding the flood zone. Just because it's not in a FEMA flood zone per se, the county does have their own elevations. And some municipalities look at that as best available information these days, and I know Swiftmud does. So I hope that, city staff looks at those elevations and takes them into account when they do review this to make sure that there is mitigation for those Pinellas County floodplain impacts. Since Pinellas County is not involved, they won't see this project, but Swiftmud will. And sometimes they catch it, sometimes they don't. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay.
So staff can hopefully follow up on that.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or, any comments among the board itself? Do I have a motion on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case number FLD 2020-10020/PLT 2020-11006 relating to these three parcels along Union Street. Based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report, and at today's hearing, hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with all the conditions of approval as listed.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. That matter is approved. That covers our cases for today. Are there any director's items? No director's items for today? Then that would wrap us up for today. At this point, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.